fellow retro fans, William Keck has led a heck of a life, to put a pun mildly. Since this fantastic conversation you're about to hear, I've begun reading his new book, which I must say is perfectly titled. When You Step Upon a Star, Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy is soaring with high critical acclaim. And after cracking the cover of this book, I can easily see why. Frankly, I can't put it down. As an entertainment reporter and producer, the sheer amount of classic celebrities that William has rubbed shoulders with will make your head spin. Just meeting these folks was all he ever really wanted, but the twist is he eventually found himself, quite unintentionally I might add, as a reporter for the dreaded tabloid The National Enquirer, putting him at odds with many of the people he actually admired the most. To be clear, Mr. Keck is brutally honest about his escapades and definite shady behavior, which earned him a lot of enemies within the Hollywood industry. But as you will read, certain dramatic instances made him re-examine his role as a reporter and that of his very own life. To put it bluntly, he turns it all around, and with this book has made a real attempt to make amends while also proudly coming to terms with his own hidden identity, for lack of a better term. In fact, William Keck is a class act, as you will hear, so enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast the esteemed William Keck. Hey, William.
Esteemed, Pat. Boy, I don't know that everyone would agree with that, but I appreciate that. It's good to speak with you today.
Well, thanks. You know, I was just going to say, it's either that or I could go with the man celebrities love to hate.
Well, I like that too. And that's, well, yeah, I think that would be in the past. I think some people now don't hate me as much as they used to, and some people, believe it or not, actually like me now.
Exactly. So I wasn't going to go with that. I would have had to put like past tense, loved to hate, but now they love.
Yeah, I love it. Perfect. Yes, yes.
Oh, well, I will tell you, sir, that my copy of When You Step Upon a Star is due to arrive tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Which really kind of stinks because I was expecting it a couple days ago. But
yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I can tell you about it. Want me to read you the whole book right now? How much time do we have?
Yeah, let's start with the forwards.
It's only 400 pages, 39 chapters, and an index, and I can read you the acknowledgments if you want.
Well, you know, I had a former podcast guest whose name you may recognize, Mr. Christopher Knight.
Oh, yes.
And
Peter Brady.
Yeah, I follow their the Real Brady Bros podcast.
Yeah, we had fun.
Well, and that was what was really a pleasant surprise. Let's try that again. That was really a Nope, let's try that again. See, this is what could have happened in the beginning. Yeah, no. Pleasant surprise, Pat. That's what you're trying to say. Okay, got it. Because we had this interview booked. And I listened to this week's version of the Real Brady Bros, and there you were.
Yeah. I had some apologizing to do to the two Brady brothers, Christopher Knight and Barry Williams, and I'm happy to say that during that time we spoke, Barry did absolve me of my Brady sins, and I've been welcomed into the family home as an official Brady, so that feels good. Full circle.
Yeah. Well, I saw that. There's a photograph you have on, I think it's on your website, of Barry with the book on his chest and this look of complete and utter horror.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should explain, what the book is. I mean, it's so people understand that it's my remembrances and confessions of my interviews with celebrities that did not go well during my 30 years as a Hollywood celebrity reporter. So, 99% of them went really pleasantly, as I'm sure this will, Pat. But there were times when I just stuck my foot in it. And a lot of those stories are from when I worked for the National Enquirer. I worked at the Enquirer during the mid-'90s, and I was called upon to do some sort of heinous things. I say that it was like working for the mafia. So I got to meet all the favorite stars that I wanted to, all my idols from when I was a child. But I was meeting them at their weddings and funerals and in their hospital rooms and, all that sort of thing. So it was a case of be careful what you wish for. I got it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the term cringeworthy definitely fits well in that aspect.
Yes.
I love that. I mean, most of America loves that kind of stuff. And that's why I'm really looking forward to getting this book because, I've read a lot of autobiographies and some of them are quite amazing, quite shocking. I could name a few, but I'm looking forward to getting into this book because that's always the most fascinating part.
Well, I think people are surprised by the book. I think they think it's going to be one thing and then it's something else. I think people are expecting it's going to be just kind of a collection of celebrity stories, like Look Who I Met. But it really goes much, much deeper than that. It is that. It is my interactions with these people, but it's also a gradual transition from somebody who really wasn't quite happy with himself, who was causing trouble in Hollywood with these celebrities, to somebody who came to love himself and cleaned up his act, and through the book reached out to these celebrities that I had wronged back in the day. And several of them have chosen to join me on my journey and have contributed little essays that appear in my book about their perspective of our interactions back in the day. So there's that. There's also lessons learned at the end of every chapter that show how I was able to grow and learn from the mistakes. We can either ignore our mistakes and we stay the same, or we can look at those mistakes and decide to change. And that's what I did.
A true tale in redemption.
Yeah, I believe it is.
I think based off the photographs that Harlan sent me, folks, you'll see this in the slide. I do a slideshow version of this podcast as well as just the audio, so I'll put that up on my YouTube channel.
Great.
Wait until you see the pictures of William with all his friends.
Yeah. There's like 200 photos in the book. And I know early on in my career, some other journalists kind of, I think, poo-pooed me bringing out my camera and taking photos with these folks. But I knew that this was history. I think in the back of my mind, I always knew that I would write a book. And I thought it would be much more interesting if people could see me meeting these people, and also would prove that I actually was meeting these people and interviewing them. So, and now we live in a period where everybody has a phone and everyone's taking selfies with celebrities and using it for their own promotional and social media purposes. So now people think nothing of it. But back then, I was frowned upon.
Well, boy, what a treasure trove. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, no regrets. And I mean, a lot of these celebrities are no longer with us. And a big mission in my book, in my life, was really to meet my favorite classic TV stars. And so the book is filled with photos of people who are no longer there. I mean, the Gilligan's Island cast and Florence Henderson and Dixie Carter and the Golden Girls. I mean, I got to meet every one of them before they died. And yes, there's also photos with Sophia Loren and Liza Minnelli and George Bush and Laura Bush. But it was really those classic TV stars that I loved. I was an only child. My father died when I was 5. So I really kind of escaped into my television. I adopted these TV families as my own families. And I looked at some TV dads like Michael Landon and Robert Reed, Andy Griffith as my surrogate dads. And so when I came to actually meet them, it meant more than just a celebrity encounter. It was really sort of feeling like the fulfillment of a family reunion, a fantasy family reunion.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. You've only dropped a few names so far.
No, well, yeah, well, there's no getting around that. The index, I think it's the longest index I've ever seen in a book.
Yeah.
Every celebrity that you can imagine is in there. It took me forever to put that index together, but I think it's fun to see the range of folks that I got to meet. I mean, some of the legends that I brushed elbows with, who are long gone, Lana Turner and Lauren Bacall and Jane Wyman. It blows my mind. I don't feel like I could be that old, that I actually met these people who were in black and white movies back in the 30s and 40s. But I got to LA just in time to meet the last wave of them before they left us.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's very impressive, folks. And I can't wait to get this book. I mean, just the one-lines from, some of the biggest names talking about you in this way where it raises the question, William, at the time when you were at your most notorious, for lack of a better term, what do you think? Were you more feared or more hated between the two? Or was it both?
Well, when I was at the Enquirer, I was anonymous. I did have my byline on those Enquirer stories. So it did say by William Keck, but people didn't know my face. And I wasn't interviewing them in public places like on a red carpet or in their dressing rooms. I was sneaking into places. So a lot of times they didn't even know that I was there spying on them. I write in the book about stealing Kelsey Grammer's garbage to kind of get dirt on him and hiding in a tree at Dean Martin's funeral to spy on who the famous attendees were. High-speed chases with Elizabeth Taylor and Britney Spears. So they had no idea. I'm sure that they didn't like what was printed, and they didn't like who was following them and who was poking in their heads into their hospital rooms. But it was really only later when I quit the Enquirer, and then I went to go work for legit outlets like USA Today. I was USA Today's West Coast celebrity reporter for 5 years. And then I was a senior editor and columnist for TV Guide for 6 years. And then I worked as a producer over the Hallmark Channel. In the beginning of those legit jobs, I think I was feared because even though I quit the Enquirer, I say in the book that the Enquirer wasn't done with me yet. The Enquirer hadn't quit me. And a lot of the fact-finding tricks that I'd learned at the Enquirer followed me into my interviews when I was sitting with the big stars in their homes and in their dressing rooms. And I was pushing buttons that I didn't need to push. I was still stirring the pot. And yes, I did come to be feared by some publicists who would prefer other reporters interview their clients because they knew that their clients would probably not be confronted with questions that they didn't want asked. But, I think the way I looked at it is I never liked reading a boring interview. And I'm like, it would frustrate me when I knew that a celebrity was sitting down with a journalist and the journalist had pretty much free reign to ask them whatever they wanted to for that hour. And when it was just the same old boring conversations, I'm like, boy, I feel like the celebrity's time was wasted and my time I was wasted as a reader. So when I had these opportunities, I really wanted to try to ask questions that they hadn't been asked before. And I found that not only was going to be beneficial for the reader to learn something new, but the celebrities themselves were kind of thrown by being asked questions that they weren't asked over and over and over again. So that's what I always tried to do, is make these things memorable and unique from everything else.
Yes, I could not agree more. And as someone that does celebrity interviews, it's been hit and miss.
Yeah, can you think of a time when you rubbed a celebrity the wrong way with a question?
No, thank God. And that's probably why, Harlan still has me in his Rolodex.
Harlan, or saying Harlan is my publicist, and he's a publicist to a lot of beloved classic stars here in Hollywood. He's very trusted, and he only puts his clients with people who he knows he can trust, like Pat McCormick.
Well, thank you for that. And, thank you, Harlan. We talk about him quite a bit on this show because, he is the man.
He's a good guy.
I make a point of making sure that my wife never sees a picture of him because she's in love. And I said, well, I'm interviewing this guy, William Keck. Wait a minute, maybe I don't want to show you a picture of him either.
Well, as you may or may not be aware, in both cases, you have nothing to worry about.
Doesn't mean I can't look. Geez.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But there's no chance of your wife leaving you for either of us. We're not what she's looking for.
Or maybe. Well, anyway.
A gay shopping best friend, sure. Yeah.
Honey, I've always had this fantasy I want to live out. No.
No, well.
No.
That's a whole other category. I don't know. It's taking a dark turn. Cringeworthy even. Cringeworthy confessions of a podcaster.
I was going to say, well, honey, there is such a thing as equal payback too. So we'll talk about that later.
Why don't we switch here? Let me start to interview you. You see an opening.
Well, you've obviously got much more experience. 30 years of experience up against my 3 years of experience.
Well, many adventures await you.
Yeah, no, I've loved this because, you asked a minute ago, have I ever rubbed somebody the wrong way or vice versa? And I really, honest to God, out of the 65 plus celebrities that I've talked to, maybe more, maybe less, I don't keep an actual tab, but I've never actually had someone that is rude or not wanting to be talked to or for whatever reason. And I think much like your experience, what has happened with that and this experience of the podcast and me talking directly to folks such as yourself, I have developed friendships.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, close friendships, which is just like, this is awesome that I'm staying in touch with Jerry Mathers. I'm staying in touch with Michael Gray. I'm staying in touch with, the list goes on, and it's.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things in the book is that I have situations I describe where I'm crashing Melissa Gilbert's wedding, or Meredith Baxter Birney's wedding. And then in the ensuing years, I've had multiple opportunities to interview these people on the record, and the conversations were very pleasurable. So when I wrote this book, I was able to revisit the past, but then have Melissa Gilbert write a page about her thoughts about me having crashed her wedding back in the day, and how we went from that very strange relationship to a friendly working relationship. And I was called back in the day to track down Larry Hagman's liver donor's family. Larry Hagman received a liver from a secret mystery donor, and I ended up flying to Northern California and finding the widow of the man whose liver ended up in Larry. And so cut to all these years later, Larry's gone. I didn't get to apologize to him, but Linda Gray, who played Sue Ellen Ewing on Dallas, she writes a commentary about how lovely I was to Larry when he passed, that I wrote a beautiful TV Guide tribute to him. I was very sensitive in my conversation. So it really it does show both sides of me, who I was as this tabloid bad boy, and how I was able to change my ways with the support of these people who can see that change. And the first 3 pages in the book are filled with quotes from different celebrities who are, I'm very grateful, are applauding the change. I mean, Donna Mills and Henry Winkler and Linda Evans have looked at the book, and they're happy to see that a leopard can change his spots. In fact, that's the quote that Julie Newmar, Catwoman, says, is how refreshing it is to see that a leopard can change its spots. How perfect was that? Oh, yeah.
It's funny. It's at the same time, you could tell there's these humorous jabs being taken.
Oh, well, I don't know that they're that humorous, but go ahead.
I was like, hey, Bruce Willis wants to know where you live.
Yeah. I mean, I chose to put some of these in the back of the book. Most times when you pick up a book, it's filled with accolades and positive reviews. Well, if you turn my book around, on the back cover, you'll see Bruce Willis threatening to burn down my house. You'll see a quote from Kelsey Grammer calling me a despicable piece of flesh who he invites to burn in hell.
But that's a done deal, according to him.
That's a done deal anyway. Yes, he says. I don't even have a chance to redeem myself, according to Kelsey Grammer. There's a quote from Leonard Nimoy where he was very upset with me for bringing up his Spock ears. And then there's a quote from Dick Van Dyke defending his friend Andy Griffith, who I had described in a little too much detail, and I talked about his little spotted hands, and Andy Griffith invites Andy Griffith to take his little spotted hand and put it in my face. So not all the celebrities love William Keck now. There's still some that are holding grudges, and I don't know. Maybe they'll get a chance to read the book and they'll see that I have changed and give me a shot at reaching out. Maybe I'm not quite demonized permanently in their minds yet. So we'll see.
Well, and one thing's for sure, never boring. I mean,
well, thank you for saying that, and I'll bring this up because I'm very happy that on Amazon I have wonderful reviews that I think really do accurately present the book, and a lot of oh my gods, and I couldn't put this down. I finished one chapter, I want to go to the next. Well, there's this one review on there that is just, I mean, I was prepared for some negative reviews. I really was. I was prepared for this guy hasn't changed and he's capitalizing off of his sins from the past. How has that really changed? But one person, there's one review on there that says that he found the book boring. And I cannot understand that. I can see people hating it, hating me, but by God, it is not boring. I mean, you know, again, high-speed chases and me coming out with some very, very dark secrets about me and celebrities. And I mean, I think it really reads like an action movie. I chose to include chapters, stories that were really active, where I'm being chased out of certain places or escorted out of certain places. So whether you care about celebrities or not, I don't know how anyone can find this boring. This one person must live the most amazing, exciting life as a spy or something if he found this book boring because, well, you know, but we all have our opinions.
Yeah, and that one stinks. I mean...
Yeah. And of course it's anonymous, you know, and there's no way to respond. But, you know, it's just, I need to focus on the 99% of wonderful reviews and quotes that people who really got the book and appreciated the messages in it. And were entertained and delighted and laughed.
Hey, Anonymous, it's number one.
I was very happy to see that it was on the top of a lot of the different charts, different genres in terms of celebrity memoirs and rich and famous memoirs and journalist memoirs. And yeah, it rose to the top on a lot of the lists and is still performing very well. I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah. And again, I think that's a tribute to you for being able to mix the good news combined with, you know, all the debauchery that you'd ever want to read about. So it's not.
Yeah. And there's a lot of competition out there. When I was about to launch the book, publish the book, I looked to see how many books are available on Amazon. And guess what the figure was?
Oh, boy. I was afraid you were going to ask me that. Okay, let me try. 200 million.
Well, you're like my mom when I would say, Mom, I got a great grade on my report card. And she'd, what, did you get an A+? And I'm like, no, it's an A-. So you overguessed. Yes, it's 80 million was the number, not 200 million. But yeah, isn't that insane? I mean, so to rank anywhere on the charts with 80 million books available is something that I'm tickled about.
Well, and I came up with that number knowing that, frankly, anybody can sell a book on Amazon. So it's not necessarily that's how many people they have under their own publishing deals. But, you know, again, it's great that people are able to do memoirs. And, you know, I spoke with Anson Williams. And I'm wondering, had you read his book?
I did. When I was a producer at Hallmark Channel, I worked on a morning show called Home and Family, and I would have a lot of these celebrity authors on the show. So yes, I had to read their books, and yeah, it was not what I expected. I mean, you having spoken to him, you know, he talks about his uncle who invented the Heimlich maneuver, and he's really it was an interesting read, Anson. Good job on his book.
I loved it. I absolutely devoured it. And the funny thing was when I talked to him, I said, you know, I've read Marion's book, I've read Ron's book, but I still haven't read yours yet. And that, of course, set up the whole interview for him to just give me a total hard time for not reading his book.
Oh, well, yeah, right.
This could have went that way.
Well, I had Anson on Home and Family for his book when his book came out. And at the same time, we were being pitched Marion Ross for her new book, and we were being pitched Anson Williams. I'm sorry, Donnie Most, Ralph from Happy Days. He had a new album out. He's a musician.
Yeah. And
I decided to, instead of just having Anson on, to also invite Marion and Don Most and have a little mini Happy Days reunion on our show. And at first, Anson wasn't happy about that. I mean, he loves these people to death. But I think he wanted to be seen as someone outside of just a Happy Days actor and didn't really want to do another Happy Days reunion. So I assured him that he would get his own segment, Marion would get her own segment, and Don got his own segment. So everybody got got what they wanted. But yes, we also had them all together for a little Happy Days reunion, which I was always looking to do. I mentioned at the start of our chat, Pat, how I adopted these TV families as my own family. So any chance that I've had over the years to reunite them, to get them together, is something that I always went after. And during my years at Home and Family, I think I hosted about 15 two-hour reunion shows with the casts of The Waltons and Little House on the Prairie and Star Trek: The Next Generation, Dynasty, and Knots Landing. And all of these photos can be found in the book and stories about what happened behind the scenes. Yeah,
and it's clear that you've had a very rich life in getting to know these amazing entertainers. People might be going, so why did you bring up Anson Williams, Pat? It's like out of the blue. Just thought I'd throw that name out there. The fact is, at the end of that book, and you may recall, it's a lesson on how to write your own memoir.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I thought, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think I'll do it.
Yeah. All right, have you?
I have begun.
Oh, wonderful.
And I mean, I'm mortified. I am just like, what the hell did I do? Why was I doing? Because I was a musician, am a musician, but I was a touring musician. So, of course, there's lots of those stories to tell, but virtually you find in every rock star book out there. But again, I got into these autobiographies on cats like that because it was so intriguing and there was so much, for lack of a better term, dark stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun to read about, It's
well, sure. I mean, the best movies are when there's an arc, when somebody goes through some dark challenges, but is able to get through that and tell the story from having emerged on the other side. So if everyone is just telling a happy story after the next, and there are memoirs where it's one happy story after the next, and it's a very forgettable, boring book.
Yeah.
So if you're really going to put a book out that's worth buying, I think you've really got to open up your soul and talk about the dark moments that we went through, because we've all been through these times.
Yeah.
And if you're going to call yourself an author, be brave enough to share those times.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's literary in a way where, as an author, you're maybe coming up with something of fiction. And by all means, don't be boring when you're doing that. It's a lot easier to just make it interesting because it is interesting. I mean,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You wrestled a bear, man. You got to write about that.
Wrestling a bear?
Yeah.
I do write it. Yes, I do. Well, in the 39 chapters, I name all the celebrities that I had interactions with. I mean, I name one celebrity who grabbed my privates when I was speaking with him backstage at the Emmy Awards. But there's one celebrity that I don't mention, a celebrity who actually was so upset with me for going to their home and asking them some personal questions that he beat me up. He got me in a stranglehold and bloodied me up as his neighbors watched him attacking me. And because of agreement that we had back in the day, I'm not allowed to reveal his name. I'm not allowed to identify who this person was. I drop a few hints. People may be able to guess. Some people have. But instead, since I can't show his face, I do show photographs of me wrestling a bear. And that was one of the other things that the Enquirer did when they weren't sending us out to stalk celebrities. They would come up with these wild schemes, these wild pictorials. And so they had me spend 2 days as an old man, I was in my 20s at the time, and they made me up to look like I was in my 80s with professional Hollywood makeup artists. And I had to kind of talk about what it was like experiencing ageism. Was I able to get into the movies for a discount without being recognized as a 20-something-year-old? But then, this other time, they had me wrestle an 800-pound bear, and they put a marshmallow in my mouth, and the bear took the marshmallow out of my mouth. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I really could have been mauled. So that's the most blatant evidence that I was in danger at the Enquirer. But I was constantly in danger at the Enquirer, sneaking into people's homes. The first story in the book is when I was assigned to get the first interview with Nicole Brown Simpson's family 3 days after she was buried. And they lived in a gated community down in Orange County. So I had tried flower deliveries and grocery deliveries, and none of that worked. So I had to get clever. And I ended up parking my car at the Ritz-Carlton, which was next to their gated community. I hopped a couple walls. I was in a suit and tie running down the beach. And I hopped another wall, and I was able to get to the Browns' home. And I rang the doorbell, and the housekeeper answered the door and said, "How can I help you?" I said, "I'm here to see Mrs. Brown." And the housekeeper led me into the home. And there I found Mrs. Brown, Nicole's mother, and 3 sisters sitting around a photo of Nicole with tears in their eyes. And Mrs. Brown grabbed my hand and looked in my eyes and said, "Thank you so much for coming. How did you know my Nicole?" So, I mean, these are the kind of stories that's the very first story in the book. And if someone can read that and think boring, well, I don't know I don't think they've read my book. It was a really horrifying situation because I was a human being. I was a reporter for the Enquirer, but I also recognized that I was in the home of a family that had just buried their murdered daughter. So in that case, I chose to tell the truth. I said, I'm so sorry for this invasion of your privacy. I'm so sorry about the loss of your daughter, but I am with the Enquirer, and they all sort of stood up and walked me out toward the foyer of their home. But Mrs. Brown paused and she said, "You've made such an effort to come into our home. What do you want?" And I again did not have an answer prepared for this because I never thought I would have gotten this far in the first place. Mm-hmm. But I thought of the right question. I said, how did you tell your grandchildren? How did you tell Nicole's children that their mom was gone? And she gave me a lovely story about her belief in angels and spirituality. And I printed that story word for word. And I think they were really pleasantly surprised that the Enquirer got it right and shifted the focus away from OJ to the victims. And that horrible invasion of their privacy, not that I'm defending it, but what it did do is it established a relationship between the Browns and the Enquirer that lasted for many years. And they used the Enquirer to tell Nicole's story, to allow her to speak from beyond the grave.
That's heavy. Now, are you still in touch with them?
No, I've mentioned, Pat, that I reached out to a lot of the people in the book, and a lot of them did choose to comment. There's the Bruce Willis chapter, and Bruce is not able to speak, so I got Sybil Shepherd, his moonlighting co-star, to write a page in the book, and it's filled with commentaries. Marcia Cross from Desperate Housewives writes about an encounter we had where I had to talk to her about some nude photos that they just leaked of her on the internet. But no, I did reach out to Nicole's sisters. The mother passed a couple of years ago. But I really thought they would respond. I really thought after 30 years, they would, one of them would give me a chance. And not that I expected it. Again, I did something horrible, but a couple of them have gone into counseling themselves and talk about healing and change. But when my book came out, it was the same time that they had filmed a documentary in their own voice. So I think that if they hadn't filmed that documentary on the 30th anniversary of Nicole's murder, they would have been more likely to come on the phone and talk to me for my book. Right. Yeah, there's a couple of car chase stories in the book. There's when I was at USA Today, I decided to do a story on a day in the life of a paparazzi. And that led us on a high-speed chase with Britney Spears. And that was a few hours of my day chasing Britney on the 405 South at 90 miles per hour. So I write about all that. But yeah, there's another chapter in the book about a high-speed chase I had with Elizabeth Taylor. And a lot of my time at the Enquirer was spent outside celebrities' homes on stakeouts, waiting to see who was coming into their home and who was leaving. And we knew that Elizabeth Taylor was going to be going in for a surgery. And so they wanted to know what hospital she was going to. So I was outside of her home for several hours, and I could hear her over the wall calling to her little doggies and, "Sugar, come to mama, Sugar." And then at a certain point, the gates opened and her car departed to take her to her procedure. And I followed, and they went faster and I went faster. They saw that I was following. They went faster to try to lose me. And a lot of times when I was working at the Enquirer, it was almost like I had a little angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. And the devil was saying, "Go on, do it. You can get the story. Come on, be a good Enquirer reporter." And the other was the human side of me saying, "What are you doing? You're not this person." And in that instance, in that case, the angel won. And I said, what am I doing following a beloved older legend to the hospital? She wasn't going on a shopping spree or to a bar. She was going to the hospital. So I did the right thing and pulled over to the side of the road, and I let her go. My editors weren't happy about that, but I was happy with myself. And I think that was probably the beginning of me opening my eyes to what I was doing and realizing that I didn't want to be that person anymore.
Yeah, the redemption.
Yeah.
That's storybook. And again, that's why I can't wait to crack the cover of that book when it gets here. And of course, we're going to push it like crazy here. You have a website based off the title of the book, correct?
Yeah, I When You Step Upon a Star is the title of the book. It's the title of the website, social media handles on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Twitter is Step Upon a Star. So yeah, I sort of I copyrighted that, and there's lots of ways to find out about the book. On the website, you can read sample chapters, little blurbs. You can see the quotes from different celebrities about the book, and yeah, you can find out how to order it. It'll take you to different sites, whether you read on Kindle or Apple Books or Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. It's not hard to find it.
I think I can afford that.
Yeah, and I think people will feel that they got their money's worth.
I'm sure of that.
The gallery of photos alone, I think, is just so much fun to see. All these reunited casts for the last time before they all started to pass away. For many years, that was my Christmas card. My first reunited encounter was with several of the Brady Bunch cast, and I thought that would be a nice Christmas card. So I sent that out as my very Brady Christmas card, and that led to, I think, about 20 years of me with the cast of The Facts of Life and Family Ties and Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and One Day at a Time. And that became my annual tradition, a photo of me at Southwark with all the Ewings, up at the Dynasty Mansion with Joan Collins and Linda Evans and John Forsythe. So you see all these photos and you'll learn a little bit about the stories behind them.
Well, yeah, and it's, like I said, this is astonishing. These photos, you really look like you belong there, too. I mean...
Oh, well, sometimes these photos would end up on the internet, and such as the Dynasty photo. I mean, it's Blake and Crystal and Alexis and the 4 Carrington children, and then me, and people were saying, well, who did he play? His grandchildren who's grown up? So that was always fun. And same thing with the Southwark photo. Did he play John Ross? Or I was always tickled to see when they thought that I was one of them, because I did feel like one of them. That was my dream, to be one of them.
Yeah.
To be a Brady.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was at the Hollywood show, and It's funny because I saw these pictures of you with Lindsay Wagner and Barbara Eden.
Yeah, it was my book.
I was wondering, was that the Hollywood show event, or?
It was. I've been very fortunate for years to work with Dave Elkaby, the organizer of the Hollywood show. When I was in Home and Family, a lot of times when he had a reunited cast appear at the autograph show, I would bring them in Home and Family to promote the show. And still in my writing now, I interview people who are going to be at the show, but I also moderate panels at the Hollywood show. So back in October, I did a panel with the whole cast of Dallas, including Priscilla Presley, which was really exciting.
Yeah.
And I did a panel with Lindsay Wagner, and then a panel with Barbara Eden. So I was able to give them copies of the book because they both contributed quotes for my book. Lindsay Wagner, that was a really special get for me because back in the day, I had crashed her father's funeral. We had wanted to get a story about the younger man she was dating, and the only way to get to Lindsay, we thought, was to go to her father's funeral and ask her about her May-December romance. And that was a really horrifying moment for me because Lindsay said F you to me, and she'd been my idol. So then all these years later, to have her forgive me and write a little in the book was really special. So yeah, and to spend an hour with her on that panel talking about fembots and bionic Sasquatches and Colonel Steve Austin was really quite exciting for me. And Barbara Eden, my God, I mean, she's in her 90s and she still looks incredible and is just the sweetest woman. Sometimes these celebrities are exactly as you would hope them to be. And that's certainly true with Barbara Eden, I mean, Linda Evans. And on the flip side of that, Joan Collins is exactly who you would think she is. So she doesn't disappoint in another way.
We loved you in Star Trek. Was I on that show?
Oh, yeah. I write a little bit about Joan's appearance on Star Trek and the comments that she had about William Shatner. There's a whole chapter on William Shatner in the book and Leonard Nimoy. There's really a little something for everybody, no matter what kind of television or movies you liked. I think people will will find stories that they'll latch onto. And people are saying it's a very good beach read. It's good for airplanes, and you can kind of jump around in the book. You don't have to read it from start to end. You can just kind of flip through and see which celebrity stories interest you. But then I think you'll want to go back and read them all, because there is a narrative of my journey, my evolution, that I think it'll make more sense if you kind of do read it all. But you don't have to. You can just choose.
Well, and it goes without saying, loaded with photographs.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of superhero photographs in there. Me with the Charlie's Angels, and me with Adam West, Burt Ward, and Julie Newmar. And that was, I think, the last interview the three of them did together before Adam passed away. I have a lovely photo in there with Mork and Mindy, with Robin Williams and Pam Dauber. And that was just a few months before Robin died. And he was very funny in the interview. I talk about how he was making fun of my super tight pants I was wearing. I think you really get a glimpse into these people, a surprising glimpse. When you read stories, articles about celebrities, you really just read what was exchanged back and forth. But I'm talking about what happened behind the scenes and after the tape recorder ended. Not exposing people's off the record secrets. It's really just exposing my secrets, things that I did to get the stories, and then the trouble that I got into for some of the questions and activities that I did. So I my days of exposing celebrity dirt are over. I'm now exposing my own transgressions and asking for redemption.
Well, either way, you've sold books, and I think just in this conversation, we've sold some books.
I hope so. I hope people will take a chance on the book. It's a fun book. When You Step Upon a Star, and I was so lucky to have a great cover designer, and they have a photo, they have an illustration they've done of my foot stepping onto one of the Hollywood stars with a little crack in it. If you look, you can see a little crack.
Perfect. Again, I wish you so much luck with this, and I'm so excited. I know it's coming tomorrow, and I'm going to be right on it, and I'll definitely shoot you an email.
Please do. Yes, please let me know what you think, and anybody can shoot me an email at whenyoustepUponAstar@gmail.com. So you mentioned Anson giving advice to people about how to write a memoir, and I'm also very open to helping people write their own memoirs.
Oh, well, I'll be sending my draft next week. Yeah. You'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I've filled up every barf bag in the house, Pat. So
No. I would love to read your memoir.
But I digress. Anyway, William, this has just been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
There you have it, another retro TV radio episode in the books. You can order your copy of When You Step Upon a Star by using the link in this episode's description, and be sure to check out whenyoustepuponastar.com to learn more and follow him on all his social media accounts. If you liked this podcast, please subscribe and leave a positive review. You can follow me at Golden Rage of TV on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and on X at Golden Rage of TV1. Once again, this is Pat McCormick, and thanks again for listening to Retro TV Radio.